Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Jenny. First
How
time,
are
first time we've been on and
I
together
know.
in 24.
We're like two ships that pass in the night.
Yeah, I've been
Well,
gone. You've been gone.
it's been a trip, hasn't it?
Yeah,
It's been a trip. So I was captured by the thought police you told everybody the other day.
yeah. I figured that's probably coming here sooner or later, so might as well go a
I
little.
died laughing when I watched that. I was like, well, thought police dentist.
Yeah.
You know, what's up there? um So we were just talking this morning before we got on here. We're waiting on Linda. I'm not sure where Linda is. I'm hoping everything is okay. So when she gets here, we'll put her on. Um, I was complaining about the change in the weather and having to go out. I was not prepared for um, the podcast this morning because I was out chipping ice because I turned the heaters off in a couple of the drops because it was like 60 yesterday. So I
Well,
was a little irritated in having to chip ice and turn everything back on. So, and then you started talking about AI already this morning.
yeah, it's scary.
What's your
It's coming.
what are you thinking about AI?
Well, we don't. We can spend a whole show on that, but I mean, AI is. I know that in our sector in finance, we've seen, there's not that many things that just kind of come in. There's a lot of news about it, and then all of a sudden there's looks like Linda's there too. But then all of a sudden it just shows up, out of nowhere, and then it's just taking over so many businesses. But we'll talk about that on another show because
We can, yeah, we can do
there's
a,
a lot to say about that I think people have no idea,
yeah,
kind of behind the scenes. And I can
we
and
could
I
do
can
a whole
yeah,
show
and I
about
can
that.
give my own experience in our business and what we've seen in investments and what we've seen over the last couple of years. Just that's kind of on the forefront.
But it sounds scary. Do we need to hear about it?
Yeah, at some point, we do need to talk about that in the coming future. One of these
It's
shows.
This is true. All right, Linda Murphy has joined us. So I'm going to bring Linda on, and we are going to talk today about something that's, it'll be interesting to see. We've got a number of people watching this morning. If you've got questions, just hit us with them. I've got the comments open on both StreamYard and on our Rumble channel, so you can hit us both ways. But Linda and I had a private conversation. Oh, I don't know. I'm going to bring you in, Linda. Hello,
Hi,
Linda.
good
When were
morning.
we talking about this? Like a
Oh
couple of
gosh.
weeks ago or something?
Well, and we've talked about it over the course of the voucher issue and funding of charter schools, and it kind of all has kind of culminated to where we are now.
Yeah. Well, I think you and I think people don't think deep thoughts anymore. I mean, am I wrong, guys?
True. Oh, so true. I mean, we all know that even our own selves are less focused with attention span, length of attention span in this digital age. I'm guilty also, texting, scrolling through things on YouTube, quick, easy, first glance opinion look. I mean, I try not to say that or put it in my permanent belief system or memory, but it's we're being inundated with information, and people are even less focused, less attentive. Their attention span is shorter. Yeah.
So I think the thing that concerns me and the reason why we were talking about this the other day, when people don't think the deep thoughts, I mean, when they just get, when they hear talking points, because I mean, we talked with Julianne Romanello just recently about propaganda. And,
Right.
we've talked about that before. People don't understand that they're being propagandized. And when you don't think deep thoughts, you don't ever back up in your day and go, do I believe that message? If I believe that message, why do I believe that message? Or, the
Right.
converse. But we just don't think these things.
Right. I worked, my background in education is in special education and standard elementary ed. But in special education, then I went into a private clinical setting for several years working with visual input, visual perception. You hear perception is reality. Well,
Yeah.
that's what people do in their mind. They just perceive something or take a quick read on it, so to speak, and surface opinion, and then that stays in their mind. As you say, there's not a deeper thought process going on there. I also did training in structure of intellect. There are many components to the intellect and what we do to analyze, synthesize, determine what we think, categorize. I mean, even in Montessori preschool, there's sorting of color and shape and size. That's a concept, that children have to learn to categorize in their mind different categories. And people that don't have these processes, if you're not doing this and learning this way from childhood, you haven't developed the neurological pathways for even thinking this way. So that's one of the problems we've got in education is, online without a lot of input. I mean, we could go into this for hours, but yeah, bottom line, people are not thinking deeply. They're hurried, they're stressed. The COVID negativity that we have within our society now of, the time off of work, people losing their jobs, being forced to take vaccines, wear mask in different situations. All of that stress is part of the looking for something to get comfortable with because we're stressed as a society. So I think all of this is culminating, truthfully.
Yeah. Well, I would like to just dovetail one thing on top of that, Linda. Because you mentioned social media and the electronic and digital age and things like that. Well, now at this time, with those neural pathways, with how the brain works, I mean, these companies outside, let's go outside of education. Let's just go to our daily interaction every single day on our phones or devices or computers. These apps and these programs that we're interacting with, they're literally made and designed to track and react, and they change the colors and the placement of things, and they have little sounds and
Right,
little notification. All those things are made to make your brain react in
right.
a certain way, so they can track and control and know how to, move us around. It's so wild
Yeah.
that
You're
that
so right, Michael. And as you know, and as you both know, this is marketing
yeah,
going on all the time. As you say, to trap, to allure, to entice people into buying product or thinking a certain way. That's what the
Thinking it's right.
propagandizing is doing.
Yeah.
And my husband was in marketing for years. He was in advertising agencies, wrote copy, created ads. And at first it was fun when it was back Buster Brown shoes, you
Yeah.
know, Jolly Green Giant. He was in
Yeah.
Chicago where they produced some of these big ads that we've all seen over the years. Marlboro Man, all of that.
Yeah.
Then down line where we get, 20, 30, 40 years later, we're looking at the kind of marketing we see now. And these people in education, for example, that we're talking about, have used marketing techniques to facilitate meetings. They use peer pressure, group pressure, the dialectic process, pitting people against each other to get consensus. And that consensus always moves us to the left, to the left, to the left. If you come to consensus with the folks that want to do this. So, in my opinion, what we're talking about today, this Catholic charter school funding and church state coming together into one. We've got to have some deep thought here. And that's a good point you brought up right up front. People are not thinking deeply and they're going to miss this. So we've probably lost part of the audience now and some didn't tune in the first place because we're going to get deep here. But we have to. We have to look at what we're looking at. We've got to know some history, some government, the Constitution. We're looking at a multiculturalism study and what do we want to impose with our tax dollars. Oh, we can say it's freedom of choice, but they're changing our society
Yeah.
when we've got such a huge institution as the Catholic Church, it's the third largest entity in the world,
Yeah.
1.3 billion members. The
Yeah.
archdiocese, archbishop, the archdiocese, this is all established through the Pope in Rome.
Yeah.
Go to the internet and look it up. Look at history, look at government. It's an ecclesiastical province, which is a jurisdictional territory of the Roman Catholic Church in Oklahoma and every other state. So
Well, and
now,
I do think I'm going to pull your slides up here
yeah,
in a second so we can kind of get going. But I do
yeah.
think that it's so important. I mean, before we say anything else, this is just from me personally.
Oh, yeah,
You know, I don't care what religion anybody practices. I
exactly.
mean, that's their own business. And Linda, you and
Right.
I have talked about this the same thing, and I don't want to speak for you, but I think we're on
No,
the
you
same
go ahead.
page.
Yeah,
I don't care. I mean, but that's the thing. And I want to
right,
jump off on our topic from this one thing. I'm not sure why, but we've forgotten why, at least the pilgrims at any reason. They did come here and they were Christian, but we've forgotten why even the founding fathers, whether you agree with them or not, they wanted to
right,
set up a government in which there was no state religion. And people don't
right.
understand this. They don't understand
Exactly.
that when America was colonized, when people came over here, they came over from European nations that were under Catholicism.
Right,
Catholicism was the state
right.
religion. If you didn't believe like the Pope, then you were excommunicated or considered a heretic. Sometimes you were actually um, uh, tortured,
Yeah.
until you made a
Well,
different
literally
judgment.
burn at the stake at various points in history. And
Yeah.
that's why I say history. We've got to understand European history, which is
Correct.
right directly the founding of the United States with the
Right.
13 colonies and those that came. And I've
Uh,
got family. I mean, my ancestors, maybe yours, probably yours. Also, before the Revolutionary War, we're talking Mayflower, Jamestown. I had some even in the Dutch New Amsterdam. I mean, I've got their books, their records, not just hearsay, but I'm not the only one. There are hundreds and millions of us across the United States that know our family history and the founding of this country are real people who were escaping. I
yeah.
don't know if you're aware of this, but I wasn't until just a few years ago. Certainly wasn't taught it in college or high school, of course. But St. Augustine, Florida was a refuge first, before it was called St. Augustine. It was a refuge for Huguenot French Protestants who fled the persecution and martyrdom in Europe that they had suffered. And that was in the 1500s. But Spain had claimed Florida. So they came in with the Spanish troops, which are Catholic, and they slaughtered the Huguenots that were there. Then it became St. Augustine. Now, that's something I didn't know.
I didn't
That's
know that either.
1500s. And that, I mean, all of this history, I mean, I admit right up front, I'm still learning the basics of some of the history I never knew.
Well,
And
and I think, and that's a good place for me to jump off on, I think, and start to pull in your slides.
sure,
So just starting from the premise of people came to America because they didn't want a state religion.
right,
Our founding fathers said, we don't want a state religion. We don't really want the state telling the church or the church telling the state either way. We
right,
let's just not get involved in that, and then that way we can have an independent nation where people are free to do what they feel like they need to do and follow their own belief systems. So
yes,
just starting from that point, let's get started with your
okay.
slide. So
Right, you're exactly right. And as you said, we've talked about this. We're talking about freedom of religion to practice your religion, but also freedom from religion, that it not be imposed upon us through the
You're
state.
gonna get in trouble for saying that right off.
I know. But
Freedom from religion, but we're
yeah,
Christians.
yeah, because who defines that religion? That's what it comes down to. Individually, the freedom of conscience to choose what we believe and how we practice our beliefs is that very freedom, that our founding fathers came and established for all of us that we enjoy. And people still, I mean, don't we see every day people flooding in to be here, right? Because of all of the prosperity and opportunity that comes, and people often don't remember the founding, but they like the icing on the cake. The cake got baked, and who baked the
That's
cake?
true.
And if we eat all the icing, and then we've got to keep this, maintain this. So the Attorney General of Oklahoma, Yetner Drummond, A.G. Drummond, has filed a lawsuit to stop this first publicly funded religious school in the United States. And it is a charter school. Saint Isidore of Seville is the name of it. And we'll talk about that toward the end of the slides. But it is a Catholic charter school system online. And when we look at this, we're not talking about just Oklahoma. The Archdiocese of Oklahoma City extends over into the Diocese of Arkansas, of Little Rock, Arkansas.
Okay.
So this is huge for the Catholic Church. Now, the whole structure, I mean, I don't know all the history well, of course, I'm not Catholic, but like you say, I'm not talking about individuals I know that are Catholic who are my friends. I'm not talking about anybody's belief or their choice to believe, whatever they choose. That's what we're talking about, is having that freedom to choose to be a
Exactly.
Catholic or not to be a Catholic. But the problem we have is this is getting brought together in a bill, a law. Actually, not really. It wasn't a law. It was through the committee or the board for the charter schools, where they voted to pass an approval of a charter school online for the Catholic Archdiocese of Oklahoma City. Well, it covers Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Little Rock. Like I said, you can go look that up. It's all there. So this is a huge territory. And we will be paying with the public purse, that purse of money that is a figurative, image of all the money that we pay in for our taxes to pay for this system. And we're paying for the education of Catholic doctrine included. And the Catholic Church officials have made that statement publicly. It's in the press that they will teach their doctrine. So those people that do a surface read and say, oh, they've got great academics, I want my child to go there, you better read deeper and see, do you want them taught Catholic doctrine? Because that is included. Now, this is one of those things you're not supposed to talk about out loud, right? Because you might offend someone. Well, if people have the intelligence and take the time to listen, we're not at all condemning someone for choosing to be a Catholic. You have a choice. Be a Catholic, don't be a Catholic. Be a Protestant, don't be a Protestant. Don't believe any religious doctrine. You can think that, I guess, but I'm not sure that's true. There's some kind of
There's always something in
thought
there.
process going on there. But anyway, whatever people believe, that's their choice. Okay, so the Attorney General has filed a lawsuit to stop this public funding of a religious school, the first in the United States. And I agree. So we'll just start there. I agree with A.G. Drummond. I believe he's right that we have state law that prohibits it, and the U.S. Constitution, correctly interpreted, prohibits it. Now, the issue we've got, and AG O'Connor, who sent a letter to the Archdiocese agreeing, approving, going along with the approval of a charter school for Catholic education. I think he's a wonderful person, A.G. O'Connor. He is Catholic. He couldn't see there was a problem with that, and he agreed with it, and he did that based on rulings by the U.S. Supreme Court. Well, if you look closely at the U.S. Supreme Court, we now have 7 Catholics on the U.S. Supreme Court.
Well, perspective is important, isn't it?
Well,
I mean, don't we always say that
mhm,
worldview is important? How you raise your kids
right,
and what worldview is important. And if it's important, it's because you tend to see your perspective is informed by your worldview.
right. I
So,
agree. And so no one is totally free of the filter they look at things
right.
through, their worldview. And so we've got the Supreme Court here, 7 out of 9, and they've made some rulings where they've agreed that it's not unconstitutional to give some public money in
Yeah.
private religious situations, organizations, entities. Well, they've crossed that line, and that's what AG O'Connor pointed to. I'm just summarizing it. People can go look these up. They're online, read them, ask us. We'll send you a copy, whatever, because we're going to talk about a lot of things here and not getting into that too deep. But so AG uh, Drummond, Getner Drummond, I agree with. I think he's right. The Blaine Amendment is something that was out in Congress for discussion and debate and was not put into federal law back in the late 1800s. But then a number of states put it in their state law. And that Blaine Amendment, named after the person that was proposing this, it was to prevent the religious funding from going out to, basically, it was for schools, because that's where there was a real push, even at that time, from the Catholic Church, because it is such a large institution. There are only 2 entities in the world that are as large, membership wise, and that is countries, China and India, I think is the second one. And then
Wow.
they've got like 1.4 billion citizens. The Catholic Church has 1.3 billion members, and it is a worldwide entity. Again, the Pope himself has appointed the structure in Oklahoma. If you look at the history of the Catholic Church in Oklahoma, it's all appointed by the Pope to set up the diocese first, the archdiocese, and then appointing the archbishops and the bishops. Okay, that's all directly out of Rome. People all think that's not connected to us. Well, again, I plead ignorance myself, and not having known this for a long period of time. But I got into it when I started looking into the details here. We need to know what we're doing. Okay, on the next slide then, if you want to bring that up. So then we have universities that are Catholic universities all over the United States, Jesuit universities, most of them, and they're very involved in this lawsuit. Different ones are named in different articles, and there is Fordham Foundation has been very, and that's Catholic. Fordham University, they've been very forefront with the choice movement to start with. So the whole idea of getting vouchers was very much supported. A big key part of the support was coming from the Catholic Church. I went in 1995 to the National Center for Education Reform first annual conference, which was in Boston, Massachusetts. That's when I was in Governor Keating's office, and it was recommended that I go, and it sounded like a great idea, and I went. But what I found was it was 99% about choice. I
Oh,
didn't know
wow.
that. I thought we're coming together to get all of the best,
Wow, even back then?
even back then in 95. And I can tell you a lot more, but I could spend the whole
Wow.
show talking about that. We'll talk about that offline later. But the point being, I learned there, Chester Finn was there. I mean, all the leaders. Lisa Kagan, who was in the legislature in Arizona at the time, later, not long after that, became the state superintendent in Arizona and brought in the charter schools and the vouchers and all that in Arizona.
Right.
We're still seeing all of that playing out there. Okay. So I'm just saying, I learned in 95 that this was very much centered within the Catholic Church. They had a great vested interest in promoting the funding of their school system with public money. That's what it comes down to. Okay, so that is Notre Dame. So let's look at this slide. 55% of Oklahoma City public school students are Hispanic, reinforcing the continuous and consistent growth of the Hispanic community in our city. I'm reading this on small print here. Latinos are twice as likely to start a new business as the rest of the U.S. population. And between now and 2048, Hispanics will account for 85% of new job holders in the U.S. workforce. Okay, this is a statement by a woman. Can you read the fine print? I can't
Yeah,
quite.
this is Miriam Campos, Arvest Bank, OKC Latino Young Professionals.
Okay, and
Is
that
who
was
made that quote.
Yes, and that was taken from an article. I've got a copy of it. And so I'm not saying that, but this is a Latino in Oklahoma City who's very active in the community, promoting Hispanic interests. Well, I'm not against promoting Hispanic interest. Everybody should promote their interests, but I'm saying that about us too. We need to promote our interests as citizens and taxpayers, that what we pay for should be something that's been publicly approved. So there was no legislative action on this funding of the Catholic charter schools. There was no representative elected official except the governor involved in appointing the board, which then voted. So it didn't go through the legislative process. In other words, the three branches, the legislative and the executive producing law that we're going to abide with, and the appropriation of money. When money's appropriated, the legislature has to approve it.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, what we're looking at in this slide is the growth of the Hispanic community, which is very much centered, as we'll see in further slides, with the Catholic population. And so that's what we're going to look at if you want to go next. Okay, so these are people who came to the beatification of Stanley Rother, where in Oklahoma City at the Cox Center in September of 2017, there was this huge ceremony and program honoring Stanley Rother and his beatification. Okay, if you want to go next. And you can see here 20,000 Catholics from all over the world. And that again was in September 2017. Okay, and next. Can you read that? I'm sorry.
I can. 20,000 gathered September 23rd for the beatification of Francis. What Friar? Is that FR as Friar?
I think that's Father.
Father. Okay. Father Stanley Francis Rother, a native of nearby Okarche, Oklahoma, who had been martyred in 1981 while serving in Guatemala. The unanticipated crowd well exceeded the 14,353 seat capacity of the Cox Convention Center, and several thousand had to be turned away. Many more were able to watch via live video stream on EWTN, including residents of Santiago, Atlan, and Guatemala, where Rother had served from 1968 until his murder on July 28, 1981. The Mass was celebrated by Cardinal Angelo Amato, prefect of the Congregation for the Causes of Saints, and Archbishop Paul Coakley of Oklahoma City. More than 50 bishops and cardinals from Italy, South Africa, and Guatemala, as well as more than a dozen U.S. states participated. The Mass included sections read in English, Spanish, Vietnamese, Filipino, Korean, Comanche, and Zutchul. Zutchul. I'm not sure what that one was, so sorry about that. That was from the Oklahoman.
Yes. Okay, that language, and I can't remember now how to say it either, but I looked it up yesterday, and it's a Mayan area of Guatemala. Mayan, there are like 22 Mayan groups, and that's one of them. Okay. All right, next one.
Okay. Now, let me just ask you this.
Yeah.
The beatification, isn't that making them a saint?
It is a step towards sainthood, what I've read. Again, I'm not saying I'm an expert. If I get something wrong, Catholic friends, send me a message. But beatification, what I read is it's a next step in sanctifying in their belief system, their doctrine. It's a second step in sanctifying where he can be honored, and it's on the road towards sainthood, which requires 2 miracles. Now, they've got a testimony of a woman that came to this ceremony, and there's a YouTube video of this that one of our Oklahoma City stations covered where they interviewed her, and she was praying at the altar with candles in this Cox Center during the ceremony, because she says that her testimony and witness is that Rother did perform a miracle when he prayed for her and she was healed. And so she submitted that to the Vatican, they said. And so they're looking at another miracle to be made a saint. So
I see. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Okay, so just more pictures of the beatification of Stanley Rother, and there's a tapestry with his picture.
Wow.
You can see the ceremonial, very beautiful, ornate, colors and art and design. Whoops. I don't know how I got that. There was I don't know where
there it is. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So that is a model, obviously, of the Stanley Rother Shrine in Oklahoma City. And that is came after the building of this came after the beatification. So I put it in, the chronological order here. So
that's
then
that huge building on I-35 and I-40 or something, isn't it?
Right.
Where is it?
It is. It is right off of I-35 going south of the river.
It's enormous.
Yeah, it is huge and many acres. I didn't write that down, but it's a large complex, as you can see. So there's more here that will show you more about it. Tepeyac is the word. Tepeyac Hill at Stanley Rother Shrine, if you don't mind reading that.
Okay. The Tepeyac Hill, built 24 feet high, has religious significance because it honors Our Lady of Guadalupe. It is similar to the one that is in Mexico City that is dedicated to Our Lady of Guadalupe. We will have a walking trail that goes up to the top, and at the top we'll have a statue of Our Lady Guadalupe where people can come and have some meditation time, some silent time, and a place for prayer and to ask for prayers from Our Lady of Guadalupe. The area of Southeast Oklahoma City has many Hispanic Catholics. We feel this is very important to our shrine site because of the fact that this is going to impact our heavily Catholic community who have a great fondness for Our Lady, who will come and hear about Our Lady, and also Blessed Stanley Rother. And that was Miguel Mirles, but I can't read. He's the development director for something that I can't read.
For this shrine.
Okay.
Yeah, he is the development director, and that's from the Okarche Warrior, I believe it's the paper there at the bottom. And so I've got a copy of that article, but I'm just quoting a Hispanic man who has an office there at the shrine, and they're building this hill, which is part of the property. And there'll be more about this because this becomes a big part of the multicultural bringing together of people in Oklahoma City under the Catholic banner, and then there will be other celebrations in the future we'll see here. Okay.
Whoop. Okay, there we go.
I must have a back one I started that I didn't put a picture on, or I don't know. I'll get that fixed. Okay, Our Lady of Guadalupe. This is at the top of the hill that we're going to see. That didn't bring in a couple of others, but go ahead.
Okay.
We need.
I don't know why they're not pulling in the photos. That's really odd. Pictures.
Yeah, go back because we're going to miss the point, I think.
Okay, hold on. Let me see how many of them we need to have. Wonder what happened to the pictures. You know,
Yeah, that tells the story
Oh
that I
no.
wanted to convey there.
Dang it. Let me pull while you're if you'll talk, let me pull this up on PowerPoint
Okay,
and see if I can repopulate it. So hold on one second while you're talking. Go ahead.
sure. Okay, that Tepeyac, as the man said, Morales, I think was his name, that we just quoted, he said that this was something that I think in his statement, it's written here somewhere, that this is a duplication or a replication of a hill in Mexico where what they call Our Lady of Guadalupe is located. And so we have many of the Mexican immigrants coming in to South Oklahoma City. As I read earlier, there's 55%. Now, actually 60%, I'm told, but I didn't have it in writing. So I just used the 55% of Oklahoma City public schools are Hispanic. Okay, what that alone is drawing, you know, duplicating what they do in Mexico and then bringing the Mexican people here. You know, we are importing the culture along with that. And to fund this system to, you know, to secure people in a doctrine that keeps them within that system, I just think we need to look at the bigger ramifications of all of this.
Well, I don't think I had ever thought about, I mean, because it is very true that the Catholic Church is, I mean, it's all over the world. So that's, oh, wow. I just had a very weird thought hit me. So we're one world government, right, is bad.
Right.
Therefore, one world religion is bad.
Right. If we are a Christian,
it is not pulling these pictures in. That's the weirdest thing. Well, I'm going to try it one more time because I just.
What about if you just pull it up and do a screen share of it?
Well, that I may be able. I think I may be able to do that.
Yeah, because it's really. I mean, as we say, a picture is worth 1,000 words sometimes, and we can save a lot of words by just look at it.
Having the pictures. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of those. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, in the meantime, while you're getting that pulled up, I mean, there's no disputing the fact that, you know, go back through history as far back as you want. The Catholic Church has always been involved in government, in politics, in you know, state this and that. I mean, that's what the Reformation was about, coming out of the 1600s, was the division of the Protestants and the Catholic Church. And I mean, you look at like the Declaration of Indulgence by the Catholic Church, where they wanted to have these societies where they could plant, you know, that where they didn't want to just have a Protestant or a Christian nation. You know, they wanted to be able to go in there and have their claws or their fingers in everything. And look at just I have a book called Operation Gladio. I don't know if you ever heard of that, but that's kind of the unholy alliance between American intelligence agencies and the Vatican and the mafia and all these. I mean, they've always been involved in all this stuff. I mean, it is. I mean, you hate to say it, but it, you know, there is a plan behind it.
Well, since we're getting ready to fund this in our state, it looks like I'm not sure we're going to win the lawsuit because of the U.S. Supreme Court makeup and their previous decisions, which is why they pushed forward to do this, because the Supreme Court's already ruled some, like I said earlier. When you're ready to show those, you know,
I am. I'm just trying to get it. Hold on one second.
When I think, Linda, it's like Jenny and I have always, and we brought this up multiple times on this podcast. You know, when you open the door for one sect or area, you have to go into all of them. You have to have the Luciferian and the Satanic churches and the Muslim this and that. I mean, you can't go just one and that's it.
No, there we go. That's a new one. That
Okay.
wasn't there a while ago, so that looks good. Yeah, I totally agree. And so we aren't picking on the Catholic Church or people's beliefs. What we're doing is talking about a specific issue where we have focused in our state a problem here that we're concerned with funding a religion. So this sets a precedent. If it gets done and goes through, it's a precedent for all religions, as you just said. So
Well, let's finish because I'd
okay.
like to wind
Yeah.
up with that because I've even got a couple of slides that I wanted to show
Okay,
you
sure.
that I think people have forgotten about issues. But I'd like to finish your program because this is very
Right.
interesting. Okay, so this is
Yeah.
more of the dedication of the shrine.
Right. And this is at the hill, the Tepeyac Hill that we just read about.
That's the
This
hill.
that is they're at the
Okay.
base of it there. Yes.
Okay.
They're
Interesting.
walking or going up the hill, evidently.
Okay.
And those are the Catholic Church leaders, not only from Oklahoma City, but from other parts of the world. Okay. And then here are more people, watching the ceremony at the hill. And then we see, when I first saw that picture, I thought, oh, they brought the Indian tribes in because we see that, Oklahoma Indian tribes that are here in Oklahoma, I should say. But no, they're not. This is from Mexico, evidently. And this is a Mexican replication in Oklahoma City at that Tepeyac Hill. Okay, now there's more. Here's a picture of, at the top of it is a statue in the middle of the Our Lady of Guadalupe, and kneeling is Saint Juan Diego. Okay, kneeling at the statue of a statue kneeling at the statue. Okay.
Okay.
Our Lady of Guadalupe. Now, people pray to Our Lady of Guadalupe. They pray to Stanley Rother. I've heard it on the radio myself, even out here in Western Oklahoma, Catholic radio station. I've heard it more than once. I was like, what? Yeah, already they're praying to these people. Okay, go ahead. So this is the culture. This is
Wow,
the
that is very large,
for
that
funding.
statue. Wow.
Yeah, it is. You can see the people there,
Mm-hmm.
and they're blessing the statue in this ceremony. Okay. And again, blessing that statue, Saint Juan Diego. That will be an interesting study. I don't know about him, but go ahead. And then here are more of the dancers with the costume of, their culture, their religion. I don't know what all that means, but it means something because it does with the tribes. There are meanings to the dance and what they're doing. Okay. And then here's a banner along with them. I don't know if that's Mexico. It looks
I
like
think it's Mexico.
I think it is too. I haven't really stopped.
Well, it's the colors of Mexico with the Lady of Guadalupe in the middle.
Yeah, it is. Okay. And then this is after the building, the shrine was finished. And this is their dedication mass, which was in 23. So we fast forwarded here over about 6 years from the beatification to the hill ceremony, now to the dedication of the shrine. And they have Stanley Rother's body is in the altar at the front. Yeah. And so that's part of the YouTube people that, excuse me, if we're going to do funding of something, I think we need to understand what we're funding. And any
wait, but
fund.
Linda, that seems like it might be common sense a little.
Well, I would think so, but it takes that thought, like you said earlier, that thought beyond, oh, that's their business. They can do what they choose. Now we all have more parental rights to choose from. Okay, that's a great line, but there's more to it. Archbishop Coakley of Oklahoma City. So there's a picture of him. And then the last picture. This is the Saint Isidore of Seville painting. And I think that's his birthday, April 4th. I think they have a feast day for that. I'm not sure, maybe just some parts of the world, but Seville, Spain.
Yeah.
And he lived, look up his history, and in the Catholic sources, he was there with others of his family that were part of the time that the Spanish Catholic inquisitions and things were going on in that country. I don't know how many people, again, I know I'm saying things some people have never thought about. And if you want to just take offense and not think about the facts of history, then I know are people that will do that. But I think because we're going into something that doesn't just affect Oklahoma, but affects the whole United States. If we set the precedent in Oklahoma for the first religious school funding in the United States, where we've had freedom of religion and freedom from religion, then we've crossed a line that will force this in states all over, all of the states. It will be a battle that will have been won here by the church at Rome. And if we want to, along with people that are not paying attention to what they're doing, you know, St. Gregory's University closed down in Shawnee just a few years ago, about 7 years ago. I actually had a granddaughter that was there on a scholarship for basketball. And, you know, even in my own family, you know, we haven't talked about Catholicism, Protestantism. And I'm just saying, as Christians, we better take responsibility for what we become a part of, what we agree to, what we support, and we better understand what we're doing. And
So,
I've been guilty of blurring those lines and not talking about it.
so I'm going to follow up on what you said because what you said was so impactful and important. Nobody's saying that we want to interfere in anybody practicing their
Right,
religion. The
right,
one beautiful thing, as I said, as kind of our jump off point for this particular podcast today, the one thing about America that was so different than any place else in the world at the time of its founding was that the founding fathers said, you know what? You come here and practice whatever you want. We got sick of being told what to do by the Catholic Church. We don't want that. You come here and practice whatever religion you would like.
right. That's right.
Somehow now we have decided that it's not okay to practice the religion we like because we're moving toward a state religion again. And
Right.
it is a fact that most of the religious schools, well, the one religious charter school is Catholic. That's just a fact. It's
Right.
simple fact. But don't forget that we had Brett Farley on.
Yes.
And Brett Farley is works with the Catholic Archdiocese of Oklahoma, and
Mhm.
they are intent upon school choice. Absolutely intent. But more so than that, they are intent on the state spending state dollars for that education. And this is the Catholics that are promoting
Right.
this. And I wanted to share my
That-
screen here just a second because you guys will remember this, but I don't know that everybody is going to remember this. So I just thought I would like to make this point again. All right. So in this is from 2020. Okay. And
Yes.
this is basically the head of the satanic movement who is saying, okay, you guys, if you really want to do this, if you want to use state tax dollars to fund private education, and it's going to be private Christian education mainly, then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to figure out how to start a school. And it's going to be a satanic school. And the Satanic Church, this was the monument that they were going to build when back in 2017, Dr. Ritz, if you'll remember, Dr. Ritz was a representative. I loved Dr. Ritz, but I disagreed with him vehemently on this. He paid to have the 10 Commandments installed on the grounds of the state capitol. And because of the fact that there was a separation of church and state, and the state couldn't use state funds to put the 10 Commandments there, Dr. Ritz paid to put the 10 Commandments there. Well, right after that happened, Lucian Greaves of the Satanic Temple came in and created the very statue that you're seeing right there. And he was in the middle of a lawsuit with the state of Oklahoma because they put the 10 Commandments on there. He was going to pay for this statue, a private person, right?
Yes.
A private person to put this statue on the grounds of the Capitol. So does anybody remember what ended up happening with the 10 Commandments? The monument?
I think they were removed for sure, but I don't remember.
They were removed and purchased by OCPA, and they stand on OCPA's property, Oklahoma Council for Public Affairs, today. But why would they have removed that? Well, could it have been because they would have received all kinds of hell? And I'm sort of making a pun there. True. For allowing this statue to be erected on the state capitol grounds. So the fact that these people they can't seem to look, these people who are in favor of this tax credit, and don't forget, I've already proved it's not a tax credit, it's a voucher, so it's state money going to private schools. So if state money is going to go to private schools, and by the way, I don't know if you saw this or not, but I wrote an article about the fact that there are 2 Muslim schools that can be chosen out of the list of private schools. They can be chosen as well. I don't know how many people have chosen that. I don't know how many state dollars have been going to Muslim schools. And again, whatever religion you want to practice is yours. But I have read about the Quran. I've not read it, but it is, they don't like Christians. I mean, their whole idea is to subjugate Christians in the name of Allah. So if that's the case, why am I, as a Christian, my tax dollars going to perpetuate a school in which the doctrine of Islam is taught, in which they want me to die because I'm a professing believer in Jesus Christ? So, I mean, why are we not getting that this is an enormous problem?
Right. I totally agree. No, excellent points. And that's it. This opens a kettle of fish, worms, really, of many, many different kinds that we have to deal with. The cost, the cost of doing this is tremendous, because we've opened up private schools that we haven't funded to the coffer now. And now the Catholic schools, which are private, could really be all incorporated under the charter somehow, and they could enroll everybody that way. So we're doing, the whole Catholic system statewide, which could grow tremendously with all of the influx of Catholics and people from Mexico. As we know, the statistics are all there. I've got those. I didn't quote those, but yeah, we've got all of that information. It's not hard. You've just got to put all the pieces on the table and look at it, and be willing to look at all the variables. It's not a matter of parental rights. It's not a matter of freedom of choosing religion. And yet that's the argument I keep hearing from a number of those pushing with this effort to get this funded, They're saying that it's discrimination if we don't fund the Catholic Church, that we're discriminating against Catholics. And as you just well said, it's not just Catholics. They happen to be the ones pushing it, and they're the ones on the forefront potentially getting this funded. So that's why we're talking about them. If it had been approved for, another religion first, then we'd be talking about that religion, but people need to understand why we have these laws in place that we've had for all these years in our state and our federal law to stop that. And now that's being overridden with semantics, twisting it to be discrimination if you don't fund them.
But isn't that the way things, so with a combination of the fact that we don't think deep thoughts, and even if we do think, we start to think deep thoughts, Linda, you hit on something that I think is killing us, and most people know it. And that is, even if I think deep thoughts, even if I say out loud, well, we shouldn't be funding any Catholic anything with public money. There's this, oh my gosh, well, you're discriminating against, well, you hate Catholics.
Exactly.
No, I don't hate Catholics. I'm not discriminating against Catholics. I have lots of friends who are Catholics and I love them dearly. So no, I'm not. But that's what ends up happening. And you have to kind of wonder how much the left is pushing this from behind through propaganda that we're not seeing.
Listen, that is absolutely going on. When you look at what this really entails, we've got the borders issue, which is becoming more and more critical every day. And it's tied directly to bringing in people with this belief system that we're getting ready to fund. I mean, folks, you want to separate those and say they don't connect, like the brain doesn't connect with the heart, like the lungs don't connect with the blood system. I mean, people go to a doctor and sometimes, and they get an isolated, view of the body. And they look at, I had a woman actually talking to me about this the other day, and she's got a condition. And then when she had some heart issues, the doctor didn't know about the other condition and couldn't consider that the heart was being affected by this other condition. She said, she doesn't know what I'm talking about. I said, well, the whole body works together. And, she's going to have to become educated about that. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to look at the fact that it's not about being compassionate to people, just like the immigration issue. How many compassionate, loving, kind people and gestures and events can I document all around me every day in this community, in this state, in this nation? And yet this is being pushed as if we don't allow the flood, then we aren't compassionate. That's ridiculous.
Well,
if we're
and the worst part about it, is it tends to come, so much of this tends to come from churches, Christian churches, and Catholic churches, tends to come from these particular things. And it always flummoxes me. I love that word. It always flummoxes me because I think to myself, have you ever read the Bible?
That's exactly where I'm thinking right now.
Because how many times, Linda, do they say in the Bible, they warn, do not let this person come into the gates of your city.
Yes.
Do not, they'll come in and they'll bring in religious practices that will not work. So it's, there's nothing wrong. My two kids are, we adopted them from Africa. There is nothing wrong with coming here legally. Do the work and come here legally. But these tens of thousands of people that are just breaking down, the doors to get in here, and that are I hesitate to call him president. I'm not sure he knows he's president. That person, you know, his administration keeps saying, yeah, this is great. You know, it's not great. We're losing America, and that's the reason why they're doing it.
Well,
And
it's a whole infiltration from the left, Jenny. I mean, it's just like now you've got the Christian churches being completely politicized with woke politics and LGBTQ this and that, and you have to be so accepted. I mean, that's just all part of the plan in order to, you know, divide and conquer us in one way or another. I mean,
or divide and destroy us.
Yeah. I mean,
That's right. And I'll just take another step. You know, when I was on before with you, talking about centralized control from the top down and all the big major entities at the top. And we know this now real openly. As they say, these conspiracies have been proven to be true. They're not just theories, but they're, you know, we quote the people in charge here. World Economic Forum, the UN, you know, others that I name and put on that chart. Well, at the top, I had the Pope. Why? Do I just hate Catholics? Why am I doing this? Because again, the third largest body of people in the world is the Catholic Church membership. And the Pope was addressed by every world leader from, you know, all the way back in the United States, really, to a certain point in time, maybe, well, probably with John Kennedy forward. I'll just say that for sure. But he was allowed to come in as the head of state. The head of state. The Vatican is a state, a nation.
Yes.
Not just a church. So it is church and state. And he came in 2015, I believe was the year. I watched it and I was like, what is this? The Pope addressing a joint House and Senate, our Congress, with John Boehner, who was the Speaker of the House, and Joe Biden, who was in the Senate, sitting behind, he was vice president, sitting behind the Pope. Two Catholics, Boehner and Biden, the Pope, brought in to address as an official.
Yeah.
And I have a Catholic friend in Oklahoma City that I posted that and I said, why is he allowed to speak as though he's an official, a government official in this setting? And she said, oh, he is. He's the head of state. I mean, she knew that. And I'm like, and because this goes back to Daniel in the Bible, goes back to Revelation in the Bible, the coming together of the government, church, and state, the prophet. I mean, do you read the Bible? Do you know? I mean, I know you all do, but people that don't read that don't know why Martin Luther and others started identifying the very serious problem of the power of the Catholic Church. It wasn't just the church, it was also the state.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, to follow up on that, my friends, my conservative Catholic friends, and basically the huge majority of my friends that are Catholic are conservatives, they can't stand the Pope. I mean,
they don't like this Pope.
No.
But and I see why, because he's more out there. But we know we're not just talking about this Pope.
Sure.
But the seat of the Pope, and John Paul before him was doing the ecumenical coming together of religions, because their belief is that all of us who are Protestants, who are Christians outside of the Catholic Church, they believe that we have become heretics, or we were born or never were in the church as we should be because we're heretics, as Martin Luther they call a heretic, in their opinion, was a heretic. So, you know.
I'm going to pull one more thing in here, share my screen. I found out about this book through Michael. Michael had me read The Killing of Uncle Sam, which I've told people on this podcast to read 100 times. And if you haven't, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Go read Killing of Uncle Sam.
Okay.
Operation Gladio is written by the same man, Paul L. Williams. And
Yes.
it's basically, it just says the unholy alliance between the Vatican, the CIA, and the mafia. And he makes an incredibly credible case,
Yeah.
this author does. I mean, he has all of these uh,
It's pretty,
specific
it's hard to
documents.
dispute anything in there.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, they're specific documents. I don't know how you
Yeah.
can say, well, you made that up, because
Right.
they're documents. I mean, they're there.
Right.
And basically, during, what was it, Michael? You know better than I do. World War I, that they
Right.
started Operation Gladio, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
I know it was World War II.
I've heard of this author, and I haven't read his books, but I have heard of him, and I've read a number of other books. I've got one that was written back in the 60s, American Freedom and Catholic Power,
Oh,
which
interesting.
is a book that talks about the power in other countries when the Catholic Church has the power, say as in Latin America. You know, it's predominantly Catholic in
Right.
several countries, predominantly. And yet, do we see wealth? Do we see organization and order and representative government? And what do we see? We see a lot of poverty. We see, you know, the wealth of the church itself and the power that is there. Even in Guatemala, where, you know, Stanley Rother was there, there's a whole lot going on that it doesn't, as in America, where we've maintained our Constitution, our freedoms that we're wanting to preserve here today that we're talking about.
Right. Right.
Our issue is not the Catholic Church. Our issue is funding the Catholic Church or any other religion, and not setting a precedent in the state of Oklahoma that is upending not only government, but also, and constitution, but also the spread of religion that most of us in Oklahoma don't believe. It's not our doctrine. You know, and there again, let me have my freedom. And I don't want to be overran in a population of people that then run the government, run everything with a doctrinal view that is, you know, considering that we're heretics. That's not a good way to live.
Well, and let's just make the point. I mean, I'm sure everybody knows, but these aren't voluntary tax dollars. These are mandatory tax dollars. If we don't pay, they take our land, they take our houses. You know,
they take our freedom.
Yeah, yeah.
That's right. That's right. The public purse is something that, you know, a lot of people pursue. How can we get more money? How can we get money from the government? And this is, again, the hugest institution that could possibly do this, and tried to do it even back when the Blaine Amendment was put into the, you know, into the constitutions and states. So Bible study, I would just say read Daniel. You know, when you look at the statue that Daniel interpreted the dream of Nebuchadnezzar, and he saw this statue, and Daniel told him that and told him what it meant. And at the end, what do we see? The feet of iron and clay, and a rock cut without hands, which we know as Christians, that's Jesus Christ. The rock cut without hands, man didn't do this, but God did. And he comes, and what is the last government there? It's iron mixed with the people, the clay, the dirt, the people representative. So, I mean, that's the way most scholars interpret that. It's Rome. It's the Church of Rome. That is the last government. And it went from a pagan system of government into a papal system of government. And then we have the Pope in the United States before Congress saying, I'm the head of state and the church, and I'm going to, you know, be over all of this. And
well, and that,
yeah.
And, you know, and again, and I'm going to bring up something quickly. It's 1:10, so we're going to try to wind up here pretty quickly. But I want to bring up something quickly. During COVID was about the only time that I've ever really heard this come to the forefront of topic of conversation. we have allowed, and churches have done it to themselves, we have allowed the state to grant churches a tax uh,
Exemption.
credit, essentially, a tax exemption. How can the state control a church with a tax exemption? Oh my goodness. Well, by saying, I'll revoke your tax exemption, by saying, if you're going to do this, then you have to close your churches during COVID. Then you have to do this for your churches. Then you have to do this. Why people are not understanding the concept of separation in church and state. And I think I can understand that a little bit, because I remember saying, well, there's not a separation of church and state. The whole idea of that came from Thomas Jefferson's letter to the Danbury Baptist Church, where he said, let there not be a separation, between the church and state, that the state cannot be informed by the religion of, its people. So,
Right.
I can understand that, because I kind of thought about that for a little bit, and I thought to myself, well, right, we do want the state to be able to, like, for example, do you remember there was a period in time where the Freedom from Religion Foundation was going around suing city councils, particularly because they figured they could get in there for saying a Christian prayer at the opening of their services. Remember that?
Right.
And so all of this came to the forefront. Well, we should be able to, if we represent a Christian population, we should be able to say a prayer at a city meeting. A coach should be able to pray with his team on the field of a state sponsored public school. There's a difference. And I really want to stress this. There's a difference between a coach saying a prayer, a city councilor saying a prayer, and the state funding a church.
Right.
The
Which
state
is going to teach their doctrine. They're not just doing academics. And I think that's the line a lot of people have missed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, ultimately, that's what it all comes down to, is that doctrine, whether it's the Catholic Church, whether it's
Right.
Whether it's a Christian school, whether it's a Muslim school, whether it's satanic, that's the whole point. The point is to insert their doctrine with state dollar, to be subsidized by the state to propagate their doctrine.
Exactly.
And none of us should stand for that, because I am a Christian. I do not want to. I agree, with quite a bit of, well, I won't say quite a bit, but I understand the Catholics, love Jesus, and they pray to Mary, and they love Jesus.
Individuals.
Yeah. So I get that. And I'm way closer to Catholics than I am to Muslims, for example, to Islam.
Sure.
I'm way closer to them than I am to Satanism. But it doesn't matter. If I'm going to have to fund Catholicism with my tax dollars, then I know I'll have to be funding Satanism with my tax dollars, because that's what these people do. The left sues. Right. They use lawfare to get what they want. And as soon as they anticipate that Christians could get a foothold anywhere, then they're going to sue to make that stop, and to get the satanic church money, and to get the Church of Islam money. And that's my tax dollars, and I don't want it funding that. So I don't want it funding anything.
That's right. And we know the argument, and we agree with the argument that we don't want our tax dollars to pay for abortion when we don't agree with abortion. And as a Christian, we need to take a stand. Well, we're at a point in time now, this has been forced upon us by this passing by the board that passed this charter school for the Catholic Church. It's forced the issue where we need this discussion and debate. And those Christians who do not agree with the Catholic doctrine should have the same concern about funding it. If you don't agree with the Catholic doctrine, should your tax dollars pay for that? Should your tax dollars pay for abortion if you don't agree with abortion? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
just saying,
but
there's a
I,
problem.
well, Linda, I think part of the problem here is let's go back to the very beginning of the podcast with the marketing and the digital age. You've got generations of people,
Yes,
even a lot of people in my generation. They don't know history. They don't know all this stuff. All they want
right.
is their, I want to go to the golf course. I want to play some golf. I want to watch my reality TV, and I want to,
Yeah,
go eat at a restaurant whenever I want. So, they
yeah,
don't care about all that stuff. And I think, we're running into the situation now to where education is just literally another. And Jenni, I think you're studying this with the Prussian kind of history, but I mean, we're literally just producing people through the education system to just follow orders, wherever the orders come from, whether they're coming from the state, their device, whatever. No one's thinking about anything. And honestly, Linda, like people my age and down, they don't even care. I can't tell
right.
you how many parents I talk to, like in their
Yeah,
40s, that
yeah,
are my age. They're like, I try to talk to them about something. They're just like, they have no clue whatsoever. And it just hurts me because I think about my own kids and all these kids coming up,
yeah.
and it's just like, what are we even going to do?
You're so right. And I think, instant gratification is one thing that comes to mind. People want to be just instantly gratified with what they want, what they're thinking about. It's a very emotion, feeling. I've been watching ads that pop up on my Roku when I've got some documentaries on, and they're mood gummies. Oh boy, those ads are like, are you kidding me? You're putting this in an ad? I mean, my husband left the advertising world 20 years ago and he's in another area of technical writing. It got so bad you can't support it. You can't be in it as a Christian. You really can't
Yeah.
if there's certain things put in front of you. And I'm just saying, thank you, Jenni. Thank you, Michael, for this discussion and debate. And it's a hard conversation because I've got friends and family that would think, well, why are you even talking? Don't offend the Catholic people. I've got friends. Well, I do too. I have friends that are Catholic, and I know some of them love the Lord and know the Lord personally, but we're talking about a huge, powerful government and religious system that most people in Oklahoma don't agree with, and we're going to fund that with our state tax dollars.
Yeah.
Thomas Jefferson and John Adams both wrote about concerns about the Jesuit power in the United States. They were very concerned. That is the Catholic Jesuits. Now, just go find those and read those people if you don't know that. So when Thomas Jefferson wrote about the separation of church and state, he was concerned about the Jesuits too. He
Yeah.
knew that. So people that want to use that argument and twist it, again, semantics, details, study, short attention span is the problem, as you said right up front. Read, think.
Well, I'm going to even double down though on that. And by the way, and thank you too, Linda, for coming on and talking to us about this because so many people are scared to
I
talk
know.
about things. So I love the fact that you're not, and I really do appreciate that about you. But the other thing that bothers me about this whole thing is that this is just nothing but gigantuan growing of government.
Yeah.
And as
Absolutely.
100%.
conservatives and as Republicans, even if we're not talking about, even if you're offended by us, talking about the religious aspect of this, you shouldn't be offended by the fact that the state taking over a Christian or a religious organization or funding a religious organization is a huge expansion of government that's completely out of their book of jobs.
Yes.
Why do
Yes.
we keep letting the government do these jobs that aren't even in their book of jobs? And
Yeah.
but then we turn around and we say, but I can't send my kids to private school, so I really need to have that money. And it becomes again, like you were talking about a second ago. It's all we have been dumbed down to the point where all we think about is our comfort, our needs, and that's not even needs. It's our comfort, our desires, and then our needs. And we've become so selfish that everything is about us and we don't care about our actual freedom. Don't care about that. To them, to these people, freedom is being able to quote unquote get their tax dollars back, which of course they're not getting their tax dollars back to do whatever they want to do with it. That's freedom.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, we know about the fall of Rome, and what was the general atmosphere of the day? It was give us bread, give us circus entertainment, bread
Yeah.
and entertainment, food and entertainment. Well, that
That's
sounds
right.
an awful lot like as in the last days, so shall it be as it was in the days of Noah. They're eating and drinking, giving in marriage. They're just going about life. And
Yeah.
here's Noah with the ark, and here we are with the Bible. But do we read it? Do we have that truth and anchor in our life that we are going to be in that ark of protection? That's the way I look at it. And it's pretty straightforward. I'm not making the rules. God gave us the rules a long time ago about the way to live and to, I heard someone say the other day, we don't need to ask what would Jesus do. We need to read the Bible and see what Jesus did.
No,
that's there.
I love that one. But I love Sandy Harrell too, Dr. Harrell. I love to call her that. Because she's a truth teller too, and she's a person who's in the classroom right now. And here she is. That's why parents and kids aren't interested in education. It takes away from their frivolous endeavors.
Yeah.
I mean, sadly, when I was in the classroom, gosh, what has it been now, 20 years ago? It was the same way then. It's just ramped up.
That's right. We've been on a downhill slide, so to speak, for a long time.
Yeah.
And we can see that, and we just have to admit where we are. I think we're beyond fixing a lot of things, but we need to hold on to what we can and realize it and, ask God for mercy.
True, but knowledge is power. I really do
absolutely
believe that knowledge is power. And once people actually start, if we do more videos like this where we force people to have to think about something from a different perspective, I do think that does eventually change outcomes because people have to internalize things before they can believe it or they can support it. So I think, us just doing this, I think is a big springboard, toward change.
You're right, because if people haven't even thought, considered, or heard any discussion on another side of the issue, they've just got that one side coming at them all the time. And that's marketed, that's out there, that, good conservative Christian Republicans are for choice, all choice. Charter schools, we don't want to tell charter schools what to do. So why would we try to tell the Catholic Church what to do? Well, we're not. We just don't want to fund things we don't want funded through our government purse. It makes us part of. We're an accessory to that. And the cost and the door that it opens for lots of other things that most people aren't going to agree with. But I've heard the choice pushers say they didn't really care what the Gulen movement was doing in the United States, where it's tied directly to a Turkish imam who is Gulen. And all of these charter schools, they've been raided by the FBI in a number of states. Our state auditor found $2 million they appropriated to their own foundation, did not use for education purposes in that charter school that we're using tax dollars. It was our tax dollars. But we don't care what they're teaching.
Because think about it. How long ago did we break that story? I mean, Linda, you and I have been on that one for 15 years. You probably longer, me for, whatever. But I mean, it's not like people haven't had the opportunity to understand. We have, and I even wrote an article one time about the fact that some of the Turkish schools in one of the Turkish schools in the Dallas area that the state was paying for was linked to that act of terrorism where that guy flew that plane into that building in Dallas.
Absolutely.
And people don't even, they yawn. wait, what's on Netflix?
And that was actually on 60 Minutes. They did a special on Gulen.
I remember.
And that's been several years ago. So, yeah, there's a lot that's led up to this. We've been on this downhill slide of, people ignoring and these, really destructive situations developing, just developing, and here we are. So I hope that everyone understands, I don't hate Catholics. I don't hate people that I know that are Catholic. I just want people to realize this is a worldwide influence, change, power, and it's influencing what happens across the United States. Why would Oklahoma, conservative, Christian, Bible Belt, Protestant predominantly, fund the Catholic Church? Why would we do that? And
Or the Muslim church, or yeah.
Open the door for everybody. Exactly.
Correct. Well, Linda, thank you so much for being on with us today. I just can't thank you enough. And I do want you to come back on again soon so we can talk even more about this issue, because there's a whole section I wanted to talk about Christian nationalism.
Yeah.
They keep using that term. And to me, that's, I've started writing an article. I just can't seem to get it finished, but it's very important to understand that, the left is using the term, Christian nationalist as a pejorative. But when you have people like our state superintendent going around saying that we have to have Christian prayer in schools or post the 10 Commandments in, the problem is it can make you sound like a Christian nationalist. So, I mean, we really have to parse these things out and start thinking about what we're doing and where we're going. And I do want to get together for another time and continue our chat, because I think, again, knowledge is power, and just at least giving people another perspective can only help.
Church and state is coming in a lot of ways. This is one way, with the Catholic charter schools being funded, if that happens. And as you say, people who are not Catholic involved in other movements where they're pushing forward in a way that they don't seem to understand. And it all goes back to what we've been talking about: ignorance. Ignorance is not an uncapable person. That's not an unintelligent person. It's a lack of knowledge, a lack of education,
and sometimes deliberate lack of knowledge. I just don't want to know this because it would upset my routine.
Right.
All right. Well, we will talk to you again soon. And so thank you again for being on with us again, Linda. Just lots of information, and we will talk again soon. I'm certain of it.
Okay. Thank you both.
Thanks a lot. All right. Bye. All right. Well, that I thought was a really great conversation. I thought, Linda made some really great points, and she made some points I hadn't even thought of. I mean, the one world religion, one world God. I mean, that I just don't think we're thinking deeply enough. I don't need to say it 40 times. I mean, but it's true. I just don't.
I'm right there. And, we probably need to do a deep dive, even with Linda or whatever, about the founding fathers. And they were probably deists at best. They weren't hardcore Christians. I mean, yes, the Pilgrims came over. They were Christians, but guys like Thomas Paine, who was literally the sword. I mean, he was the pen behind the sword.
Right.
He was pronounced, anti-Christian. I mean, but they
I
wanted
read something about him just the other day, though, where he did. He said that he was not. He was agnostic at best, or I don't remember what it was, but I read something that kind of was a different take on that. So I don't know.
Well, there's enough, when you really, like Linda said, when you really read their letters between themselves, you can pull things out of context and say, oh yeah, George Washington was a Christian, but George Washington would never take communion. George Washington left Sunday service constantly if they had communion on Sundays. I mean, people don't know that stuff. And there's all kinds of stuff in history to talk about like that. But yes, the founders created this because they wanted us to worship whatever we wanted. They didn't want any kind of influence from the state in any capacity. as to, what
Bless
what
your
we're going to
heart.
do religiously.
Yeah.
But I think we ought to do a pretty good dive on founding fathers, because I don't think it's a clear cut 100%. These guys founded the nation on Christian principles. Yes, there was Christianity involved in that, but a lot of those guys, I would say, were just deists at best.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what George Orwell said about history. I read that quote again the other day. They change history. They change. That was something, and I just thought, oh, that man was more like a prophet than anything
Yeah.
else.
Well,
All right. Well,
just one other point I want to make that I tell my kids constantly, and I don't care about the Catholic Church as far as if that's what you want to worship or that's your religion, but I think people may forget that the Catholic Church was basically in charge of all the information on the planet for thousands of years. They were the record keepers. They were the ones that were in charge of all that information. Who knows how things actually were? It's all their spin, through history. And yes, the Roman
because if you
Catholic
couldn't
Church,
read Latin, you had no idea
yeah,
what was going on.
yeah. I mean, the Roman Catholic Church fell, but they've just evolved into another type of control organization, in my opinion.
Well, it is something we need to talk about. But the other thing we need to talk about is thank you so much to our Patreon members. And thank you so much for those of you who have subscribed and who send us checks and who, just help us out and follow us. I mean, those of you guys, you have really helped our Rumble channel so much. Just, telling your friends about us. You've helped our YouTube channel quite a bit. So, thank you so much for spreading the word about us and getting and sharing our videos, because that really makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And if you care about knowledge, that's what we're trying to do here, is just provide a little of that. So, and before we get off of here, let me say this, and I have to get my handy book so I remember. So we're going to have Wendy Dial, who is going to talk to us about the fact that we have federal funds that fund elections here in Oklahoma. I don't know that people know that. But for the 24th and the 31st, we're going to talk about some election stuff. We have a big election year this year, another presidential election, and senators and representatives, some who have elections this year. So we need to keep on top of that. And so we're going to devote Wednesdays and the 24th and the 31st to election integrity issues. So please stay tuned if you're interested in that, and be with us then. So any last words, Michael?
No. I mean, usually if I start on last words, then we may talk for another 10 minutes, but.
So you're saying that to actually have last words would just create an entirely new rope report.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as always, people need to take responsibility for themselves, their own thoughts, their family. What is liberty? Liberty is what our government was created to protect, not all these social programs, not dole out all this money, for all this stuff. Liberty is freedom with morals, basically, in my opinion.
Correct.
So, we want a country where we have liberty, and our government protects that liberty so we can be free to do all this stuff for ourselves and not have to depend on the government.
And liberty isn't just being able to tune into Netflix and watch what you want.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks again, Michael. It was love being with you again for a change. That was fun. And again, loved having Linda on. So
yeah, she's great.
We will, you have a great weekend. Continue feeling better there.
Yeah. All right.
And
thank you.
We will see everybody again on Wednesday. So have a great weekend.